We are about to enter into a completely new age of mobile. And I'm going to try to frame for you today where I think we are, what's happening with mobile, the opportunity that exists for all of you, which in some regards just validates the decision that you've all made with your careers, which is always good news. I'm going to try to frame a little bit too about how the MMA is positioning mobile. If that's helpful to you, that may be differentiated from what you do with xAd, so you'll kind of pick and choose from that. And then I'm going to jump in and share the research about some what that is. The intent is to be able to provide you enough information such that you could begin to talk about it. So I don't know how many of you know this, but as mentioned, I did run the IAB for 5 years, and we did do a very similar program for the internet industry. And in part, the reason that I'm here at the MMA is because if you know the history of the trade association, it had been very challenged for a number of years, kind of didn't really get its good footing. I think that finally the board looked up and says, hey, that internet thing worked out pretty good. Who's the guy who did that? Let's get him. And so that's why I'm here for the second go around, which is kind of unique, because you don't usually get to build a couple of different industries in your lifetime. And so I feel privileged to do that. Let me just give you some quick background, though, to the MMA, just so you have that. So we are over 800 members in 49 countries around the world. This is not a small, insignificant thing. We're horribly under-resourced, so we're not nearly as good as I would like us to be, or we will be over time, but we'll get there. In the last 3 years, since I was asked to come in and do a turnaround, we have more than doubled. In fact, if there hadn't been some other strategic stuff last year, we would have been much bigger than that. But we've more than doubled the revenues of the MMA. We moved from the smallest of the media trade associations to now being the second largest, just behind the IAB. My guess is that, although I have immense respect for what Randy Rothenberg has continued to do with the IAB, very likely we will overtake them because we have a very differentiated strategy. And what that is specifically, and it's interesting, and it's just maybe helpful for you to know, and then we'll kind of get into everything here, is that we are both global. There is no other media marketing trade association global. Nobody's ever pulled it off. It's incredibly hard to do, okay, for a whole host of reasons, both structurally, resource-wise, culturally, just everything is kind of against you. Part of the reason I'm here, because it sounded impossible. I like things that are really hard to do. The second part of it, though, is that we're also big tent. And what that means is that we don't just have the sellers, that's the IAB. The IAB just has media publishers at the table. And that's a very strong play because every other media trade group is like that. We have their agencies, the marketers, and we also have all the tech companies at the table. So this thing will honestly ultimately be colossal, would be my expectation. If I have my input to the board and the board supports us in doing that, and you as members come together, this is a very big deal here. Now, I'll just tell you one thing about that. What that means is that what we are focused on doing, and in essence, our mission is to help marketers be successful in mobile. That's it. It's all about them being successful. But what that does, that has a downside to it that you may or may not understand from your perspective. We don't get to lie to marketers. We don't get to pull the wool over their eyes. We don't get to trick them. We don't get to do the bullshit that the other media channels do. And I'm telling you, when I ran the IB, and I had a great experience doing that, and I had a great, phenomenal board, I mean, rock star people that I still have immense respect for today. But there were a number of times that the board made decisions that were anti to both marketers being successful and or building the most effective channel there ever could be. And that's not good. But that's what people do. When they get rich, they start to go, well, I don't want them to know that. Don't tell them that. And how many of you worked in the TV industry? Yeah, exactly. I mean, TV's, that's a brutal sort of game, but it's never focused on producing value for the marketer. And so there might be some people who want to disagree with me on that. I'll tell you, so I'm an ex-media planning guy. That's how I spent the first dozen years of my life. I never once had a television network or station, or for that matter, a magazine company, anyone come to me and say, Greg, let me talk to you how we make Monalto's business more successful. Let me talk to you about how we drive sales for Zest when I was at Procter & Gamble. Let me talk to you about how we build Bounty's business. They talked obscurely about that. They said we have better engagement with our consumers. We have higher listening attention. We have all that kind of BS. None of that matters to driving the performance of a business. And so where I believe we have the opportunity to make is to keep really focused on that mission, to really drive towards helping Procter and Unilever and Dunkin' Brands and Colgate, all of which are joining the board of the MMA. right? About driving their business. And so it creates a different dynamic. So some of you aren't old enough to sort of know kind of the old world. You know, I got into the business literally just at the post end of Mad Men. And there were more times than not that I could tell you that the way we did business, we literally went out to lunch, they got me drunk, and I gave them 12, and I agreed to spend, to spend enough money to get 12 pages in the magazine. I mean, that's what the business was about at one point. It's not that anymore. And it's certainly not that for xAd at all. I understand enough about you guys. Okay. So let's get into it. So I always like to do this. So that's a really nice title, but it's kind of stupid. So what do you mean you don't spend big and mobile? That's what we're going to talk about, right? Because it is all about helping marketers.
I didn't even notice.
I didn't notice either. I didn't notice either.
It's all about helping marketers to better understand. Now, unfortunately, though, this is kind of where marketers are at. They're not really ready to make that leap. There's a couple. How many brands do you know, and let's name them, that are spending more than 10% of their budgets in mobile today? Samsung. It's about the only one that I know for a fact. Who else? Anybody else out there? Yeah, Jesus. And you're on the front lines of that. Yeah. Nobody's doing that. Right. So this is part of our challenge. This is sort of what we're up against, right? Is that marketers at some level get it, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but they're not making the change. This research that we did is all about giving them the data points to create change. It's still going to be hard, they're still going to be challenged, they still have a million other things they got to do in their jobs, but this is about really helping them. And I'd like you, again, to understand enough that you can sort of repeat it. So let's take a little bit of a historical perspective. Let's look back at sort of other industries so we all understand kind of why we're here, and in part what this is all about, right? I'm going to give you two sides of that sort of quickly. There have been a number of great opportunities in history to create wealth. The Industrial Revolution, a series of other periods throughout time. I'd say the tech revolution that's happening now, right, is certainly a part of that. And you see it in the press when WhatsApp goes for $19 billion with virtually, if maybe no revenues, is a pretty phenomenal kind of event in the history, which just adds, I think, a certain level. But so, I mean, I suspect that many of you either wish that you, or maybe more likely your grandfather or great-grandfather, or grandmother for that matter, I guess, would have found oil, right? Now, the people who made money, we all know sort of Rockefeller. Did you know who really made money in oil? It was this man, Flagler. Flagler made a decision to invest in Rockefeller. That's where the capital came from. Rockefeller had a good idea, and he certainly did a lot of things and consolidated a bunch of companies. He was not insignificant by any means, but it was Flagler who actually gave him the money. And that investment of $100,000 turned itself into $75 million, which in today's dollars would be $1.7 billion. Not a bad investment. So the challenge for us, and the thing that we need to communicate to marketers, is that when there are great disruptions, as in this case was the Industrial Revolution, that when there are these opportunities, when Henry Ford is suddenly going to develop a car, remember all the sequencing of events that had to happen to make that come together were sort of unique, and yet you had to be opportunistic enough to see it in such a way, or to get your position in the right place to sort of know that. So now let's step forward a little bit. Who should you have invested in? Does anybody know the answer? Some people might. 4 great companies. You have the opportunity to invest in any one of them. Where should you have placed your bet for the greatest return? Google, yeah? Yahoo has the complexity in that it's not about when you placed the bet, it's when you got out. As Jerry Yang didn't do well, right? You know what happened, right? He had an opportunity to sell the company for $32 a share. Microsoft offered him $32 a share. He turned it down because he wanted 33, and then upon which it fell to 9. So, that. It was Amazon, by the way. But look at the scale of which that produced. So $1,000 invested in Amazon back around its IPO is worth $240,000. And I still remember, I knew the company, I'd interviewed with the company that Bezos worked for in New York called D.E. Shaw. And he quit the company and moved out to Seattle to start this book selling concept, right? But I don't think anybody really had the vision for what Amazon now has become and how it's completely revolutionizing. I mean, how many of you view yourselves as addicted to Amazon? Yeah, a lot of hands go up. I'm totally committed yesterday. I love it. In the taxi yesterday, my wife said that she needed something really dumb. It was like $8. And in the taxi, while I'm talking to her, I went on Amazon, ordered it, sent it to the house, all done, right? I mean, that's a revolution in sort of personal productivity. Now, we all sort of have these opportunities to come around, and trying to see them is really sort of tough, right? Everybody know what I'm talking about? So in 1997, I was asked, I'm from New York City. I work at Young and Rubicam. I have a lot of salespeople coming to me and telling me I'm really smart and really talented. So I think I'm a really big deal. You may have dealt with some of these people. I got asked to go out to San Francisco. It wasn't even San Francisco. I don't remember where the hell it was. Someplace sort of south off the 101. The 101 is really a horrible, awful road. It looks like a giant strip mall. This is not the silver glass and steel towers of fancy New York City. To visit with a company who appeared to me had put their offices in the second level of a really tacky two-story apartment building. Right? You all know those buildings. Maybe some of you grew up in some of those buildings, right? So that really sort of horrible, it's not even suburbia, it's beyond suburbia, those kind of buildings, right? And the carpet was dirty, and there were Beanie Babies everywhere, and the thing was tacky, and I was just so appalled. And I met with a guy, and I thought, my God, this is like the most unhealthy looking person I've ever seen in my entire life. He just totally looked strung out, and they were looking for a head of the marketing. And I thought, oh my God, Beanie Babies, this is my aunt. This would be selling and marketing to people like my aunt, who is not bad, but really irritating. And the last thing I wanted to do. I had so much disdain for that opportunity and for what that was. What was the company, everybody?
TUI or time?
eBay. eBay was looking for a head of marketing, and I thought it was the dumbest thing I'd ever seen. Now, we all know what happened to eBay. I'm here presenting to you. Jeff Skoll, who is who I was meeting with, is now making movies with George Clooney. That's a good man. So the issue is do we see these opportunities? Do we realize those? Okay? Do we know kind of what's happening either when we're in it or from the outside? And can we make the moves and adjust to sort of get to the right place? Everybody know this clip?
What are you going to do?
Oops, sorry about that.
What are you going to do now?
I was going to go upstairs for a little.
Oh, I meant with your future. You're lying.
Well, that's a little hard to say. Ben, excuse me. Mr. McGuire. Ben. Mr. McGuire. Come up here a minute. I want to talk to you. Excuse us, John. Yes. Thank you. I just want to say one word to you. Just one word. Yes, sir. Are you listening? Yes, sir. Plastics.
One word. Plastics.
So they future plastics. Think about it. What do you think of it? Yes, sir. No said. That's a deal.
So many of you might not be old enough to remember that's The Graduate, right? And that was the advice that Dustin Hoffman was being given as he went on to sort of his career post, I assume college, I think is where he was at that point, right? I really do firmly believe, now I've been in marketing advertising for 30 years. It's the career that I wanted to do. I moved to New York City specifically for it. I love the business in advertising. I haven't done as good a job in the last decade or so, but at one point I had read probably every advertising book there was. I love the business, I really do. I actually believe pretty firmly that we are living in a plastics period or an oil period or whatever you want to call it. There is something very unique and special happening right now today. And that mobile has a bigger opportunity than I think any of us can fully comprehend at this moment. It really is sort of the plastics for today. There's no question about it. In fact, I would say this, and by the way, I have a bit of a venture capital background, so I think I have some sense of sort of assessing some of those opportunities, right, of where the world's going. There's basically 3 places you could be. One would be healthcare, right? But, you know, I don't really like sick people, so that's hard for me to do. There's you know, and especially around sort of biotech. Energy, but, you know, there's some really smart people trying to solve those problems, so that doesn't include me, because I come from advertising. Or it's in this area of, I believe, mobile marketing. What's happening right now with digital, broadly digital, but specifically mobile, is huge. And it's not just that I see that and sense that and think that, but there is some historical precedent for this. So Mary Meeker, the prognosticator of our times, who understands our business and industry better than probably anybody does, pulled out a chart that didn't get a lot of recognition, but I think is particularly interesting. She talked about wealth creation in periods of development of the technological revolution that, you know, many of us, since at least some period in here, had gotten to participate. So it started with mainframes, mini computers went bigger, PCs even bigger, and desktop internet. And I think pretty clearly what's happening now is that mobile is that next wave. And you see it, WhatsApp, Instagram, Tumblr, you know, just some of the deals that are starting to happen. I mean, even Google itself some point, although they're kind of the past at this point. It's incredible how the way that this is changing the world in ways that I don't think we ever could have expected. And that's interesting. Now, it's hard to make those decisions. It's hard to make those plays. As you know, you might meet Jeff Skoll and not recognize what that could really be. And I will tell you, I had a great lesson. For me, that was a great lesson in humility and arrogance, because that's really what affected my ability and judgment about that opportunity. Although maybe I wouldn't have seen it without that. Still, who knows? But that I certainly know played a big factor. But there is something happening now, and I assume that in some level that's why you're here, right? That's why you're involved in this, because you see that from a wealth building opportunity, which is primarily what work should be about, right? There's also though something else happening, though, I believe, and I just want to make a note of that, and we're going to kind of move on to understanding sort of what's happening a little bit more about the mobile sector today, which is I think best captured in the impact that mobile has in people's lives. This was a Cannes winner 2 years ago, and I'll play it for you if you haven't seen it. It's one of my favorite sort of. Oh, geez, I keep thinking I'm hitting volume, and that's not what that is.
The Microloan Foundation is a charity that lends money to some of the poorest women in Africa to help them to set up their own small businesses. Our campaign is called Pennies for Life, and this year we staged a unique live event. We created unfinished portraits of African women, made entirely of pennies, and put them on a digital poster site. Then we invited people to complete the pictures by texting a donation to the poster. As soon as the message arrived, the donor got a personal thank you. Then their money dropped into place on the screen. The more text we got, the faster the picture built, until we had enough money to make one business loan to one woman in Africa. Then we built another one, and another one. Each donor also got a credit on our microsite, where all the portraits were displayed. It was a live, interactive demonstration of small change creating big change for women in Africa. And from one poster, in one shopping centre, in its first weekend, 21 women who had nothing now have their own small businesses.
It's great, isn't it? I love that. I love that every time I see it. Yeah. And did you hear the line in there? Small change for big change, right? So listen, this is, you know, about mobile being used in a developed country. I get that. So it's a little disconnected from my primary point there, which is that even the change that mobile is having within the homes of villagers all over the world and the transformation that that's created in their life, I think is revolutionary. And why this is in part such a big deal. And I don't ever mean to suggest that in any way advertising is per se a noble business of any kind, but it is an economic engine that brings these things to consumers. It's part of what funds this ecosystem and makes it possible. And we get to be a part of that. I felt the same way about internet. And I feel that same way, even more so about mobile because of its ability to sort of penetrate all parts of the world. So great stuff. But here's the thing, is the time right? Because that's the issue, right? Legler made a lot of money because he timed it right, because he picked the right horse, because he got into the right position to do the right thing. And that's very hard. So listen, you're all very smart about mobile. You certainly understand it. Let me just give you the MMA sort of quick perspective on sort of what's happening, okay? Just so you have some sense of that. There's three things that are driving, I think, the development of the channel and suggest that this becomes an even bigger opportunity than maybe we're imagining right now. Heard the greatest thing, Jack Haber, the worldwide head of, global head of advertising for Colgate, said, we're doing a series of CMO interviews right now. And he said, we asked him what's the difference between internet and mobile, and he goes, you can't ignore mobile. Meaning you could have ignored internet, which is really what's happening here. Okay, so let's look at it. The first part of making any channel sort of work, very simply, is the consumer adoption behavior. There's no question about this. These are the current curves, the best data we think out there for smartphone penetration. It grew 68% 2 years ago versus the prior year, 37, can't read that there, 37, 27, oh sorry, 27% last year versus the year before, and there still continues to be a pretty substantive growth rate. Ultimately, that we're now sitting, let's see if this works, yeah, so we're sitting 34% of the total worldwide population has a smartphone. That's huge. And those of you who don't know, don't have the perspective, when internet switched, when internet went like this, when I took over the IEB in 2001, I had marketers, I had the press tell me, it's so funny, they would tell me, well actually, no, here's my best one to say. Eric Schmidt told me, just after he took over the head of Google, he said that his friends begged him. Now I'm assuming this is guys like James Barksdale and who's the guy from Sun, sort of these icons of Silicon Valley begged him not to go to Google because everyone knew advertising on the internet didn't work. Smartest people in Silicon Valley said to Eric, don't go there. So Eric's $6 billion richer, definitely made the right call, right? The switch for internet was when broadband penetration hit about 40%. That was that's when the hockey stick. Now there was a lot of other factors that played into that. It come off the dot-com bust, so there was a lot of negativity to that, but it happened in sort of early 2002, 2003. It was also, too, the research I'm going to show you that I think creates enough change. I'll talk a little more about that. The other thing, though, that's most interesting is that it's not just smartphone penetration, but it's total phone penetration, which is huge. We're talking well over 5 billion people out of a total population of a little over 6 billion now have a mobile device. And that's very quickly switching to smartphones. And the only reason I emphasize smartphones is because it turns it into a media channel, right? It's where content and information is more readily displayed and sort of happens as text, although the developing countries have done a very good job. And they don't resist it. It's also part of what makes the MMA interesting because we get to take ideas from lots of smart other parts of the world, China, Japan in particular, and bring them in and make them a part of sort of the whole world infrastructure. It's part of why I like the structure of this thing. So again, very big deal. Also, too, it's not just enough to have the penetration, right? You've got to have that, but you've got to also have the usage. So this is total time spent. Mobile usage is percent of web usage. Look at that graph from 1 year to the next. This is a dramatic shift that is occurring not just in the States, right, but all over the world, even more significantly in some other places. It's huge what's happening, in particular, again, in developing countries. There is a revolution going on at a very personal level. Look at Joe. Got your phones out on the table, right? That's how we live our lives today. It never is far away from me. I always know where it is, right? All the time. My favorite stat when I joined the MMA, there's a study just come out. They said that if you lose your wallet, you'll call the credit card company in 48 hours. If you lose your phone, you'll call the phone company within 4 hours. Right? That's what this device means to us. All over the place.
3,000 texts last month. NWRUS? That wasn't a compliment. Sean, 1,000 texts? I knew. You're old enough to know better.
MYOB, will you?
Mom, who could you be texting?
IDK, my BFF Rose.
Now get a texting plan. The whole family can NJOY.
Right. Do you know what is the average number of text messages that a teenager in America sends today? Sends a month. What's the number? 1,000?
5,000.
Okay, you're quoting high. It actually is 3,300. That's send. That's not send and receive. How many have teenagers in the house? Anybody? I do. Yeah. What do you think? You think it's a legitimate number?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It is unbelievable. They live their lives on these devices. My daughter, when she was 11, got her first phone, right? Because I'm head of the MMA, so they got to have a phone early. Got her first phone. She literally, the day she got it, she walked down to my office, stood in front of my desk, and she goes, "You know, Dad," she goes, "I don't think I'd need a PC anymore with this." I go, "Wow, you're smarter than most of the executives I work with." Congratulations. Okay, so, but our marketer's ready, right? So if we've got consumer adoption, that's huge for advertising. That's the first thing. Scale matters everything. But we have marketers. So let's look at some of where we are. 76% of marketers agree mobile is the closest you get to consumer. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. 68% agree that mobile is the best way to transform your business model. That's a big deal. That is not just something insignificant. That's world-changing. And you will see companies come and go very quickly as a result of that particular one. 72% believe that mobile is the best way to build ROI, which is interesting because we haven't even done the research, and yet they somehow sort of believe that. I'm not sure how well they know that one or act on it. So, you know, there's a difference between I know it, but then there's a knowing versus doing gap, which is what we're up against. And 80% agree that mobile is a way to improve your career. Really fundamentally important. Never forget to suggest to marketers that they will transform their own personal wealth as a result of understanding something new. It's very important, and somehow that gets lost. Like, do you want to be sidelined? Do you want to be doing just simply television sales? Like, you know, like there's a big change going on here. More studies that we did here not so long ago. Marketers plan to invest more in mobile the next year. 68% said they're going to spend more in mobile advertising, 61% data analytics, 61% will buy more consultants, and 67% will do more asset creation for mobile, right? So they're there, right? They're all there. That's pretty good, right? Okay. Next part of this whole thing. But is mobile a unique, differentiated channel? Does it do something that they can't do elsewhere? Now that's a very funny thing to say to a company like yours. So I know you got that. Let me give you the MMA's broader position, and then we'll come back and talk about yours. So the first step, does mobile do something different?
I can watch live TV on my new Sprint phone. Well, my Sprint phone has TV and downloads music. I can check email. I have that. And crime deterrent. What? Trying to take my wallet. Give your... Live TV, wireless music downloads, email. I'm filing a grievance ban.
Okay, so obviously it's all there just for no other reason. I think it's funny. Right? So let's talk about the differentiated point of view with mobile. First thing, we hired Jim Stingle, former CMO of Procter & Gamble, to come in and position mobile, to talk to marketers, to work with the MMA board, and to really assess what separates this. This, unfortunately, was that answer, but you can't, how did that end up? Oh, well, okay, so we have a fault in this. Somebody make a note, I'll fix that. The closest you can get to your consumer. The question I always love to ask when I speak to marketers is, how many believe that being closer to your consumers is important? 95% of them put their hands up. I then ask, how many of you believe that mobile should be a top 3, or believe that mobile is already a top 3 agenda within your company? Again, 80-85% of hands go up. I then ask, how many of you think you're executing well against that strategy? Not too many hands. Not too many hands. Knowing what you're doing. They know it at some level, they understand it. This is a huge, powerful differentiator, if you can see the whole slide. The closest you can get to your consumer. It is the position, it's the way you'll see us talk about it. I'd love to see you adopt it. In particular, what you do, what xAd is all about, I think sort of makes an awful lot of sense. Okay, so let's talk here. I'll just pop all these out here for you. There's 3 ways that I look at this, right? One is that it's what I call the 3 Ps, right? Parts of what differentiates mobile additionally that sort of supports that getting closer to your consumer. This sense of personalization, the fact that there's generally one phone per consumer, right? We don't generally, it's not like desktop where you had sort of a PC in the home, or you had this issue with trying to track PCs within a corporate environment, made it very difficult to do personalization. More personal than ever. This sense of pervasiveness, the fact that, you know, 82% of people would never leave home without their phone. What is it, some odd 30% of people say that it's the last thing they see at night and the first thing they see in the morning, and that's married people, by the way. Right? You know, you all laugh. Everybody, there are no jokes. Every time people laugh, it's a little bit of truth in all of that, right? It is really what's happening with these devices. In fact, the number of mornings that I'm sort of woke up by that glow of my wife's phone, you know, on the other side of the bed, sort of emphasize that point. That's really what's happening, right? This sense of all day, every day, in particular when there's opportunities for transactions or insight information that lead to buying behavior or traffic driving, very, very powerful. And then I believe our third big differentiator, and this is not just because I'm here with you, is the concept of proximity. The ability to do location-based targeting is fundamental. I had a public company CEO of a mobile company tell me, I said, just curious as I came on board, I says, you know, is location really a big deal? Is it not, you know, location targeting is a big deal? He says, Greg, have you ever been in a situation where you had something that was so good, you didn't want everybody else to know about it because you didn't want to destroy the rest of your business if you drove them towards that? He goes, that's location. You're right there, right? Go.
What does USP stand for?
Oh, unique selling proposition. It's a very, sorry, it's really for the old people in the room, thanks. Advertising, BBDO kind of made their historic sort of, they said that a brand had to develop its unique selling proposition. That's really what, so it's a kind of a famous concept from old advertising. Okay. But again, the challenge is just what Bonin put it best, right? Aspiration without allocation is absolutely meaningless. Knowing versus doing. It's a knowing versus doing gap. And where are we with marketers right now? They say they want to do it. Difficult to measure impact of mobile compared to other channels, 47%. Tight budgets, we can't afford to decrease spending in other channels, 46%. They're just not shifting the money at any scale whatsoever. So what I told the board, what I believe foundationally, and based on my direct experience in having done this before, is that what you need is a compelling, fact-based, irrefutable analysis for marketers on the ROI value of mobile to their business goals. None of this like I have a more engaged consumer or readers have a personal relationship with a magazine. I used to say to magazine reps, I says, but if they subscribe to another magazine, don't they have a personal relationship with that magazine? So why is that a differentiating point for your magazine? Just the fact that somebody's participated in a show means it has some interest, even if it's cops. I mean, they're interested at some level, right? And so I'm not here to judge why consumers like or don't like sort of different media dynamics. I'm just here to sort of be able to get their attention to this as a message that sort of benefits my business and helps move the business forward. How do I do that? The answer to that question is SMoX. Long word, SMoX.me, because it stands for Smart Mobile Cross-Marketing Effectiveness Studies, but SMoX, you just often hear us refer to SMoX. That's what was developed. And I am thrilled to death to be able to show finally results for this, because the situation was, is up until 6 months ago, a brand who wanted to measure the impact of mobile in their marketing mix couldn't happen. Nobody could do it. Nielsen couldn't do it. Nielsen still can't do it. I know because I fired them from this project. Marketing Evolution can do it now. Couldn't before, said they could. Inside Express couldn't do it. Can now. They're working with us because we've helped them develop a methodology to do this. But if a brand wanted to spend more, improve that value, they couldn't have answered that question 6 months ago. And we wonder why we didn't get more budgets. Because they couldn't answer the core question, does this transform my business? Because they do care about that. I know the media people didn't always talk to me as a media planning guy like that, but the marketers absolutely. So basically what we did, just for some context, and I'm happy to go in any direction, I'm going to show you some of the results, is that we got a series of people to write some pretty big checks to fund us in developing. This is how a trade group works. We bring together a bunch of people. I mean, listen, the truth is that Procter wasn't going to go answer this question. They're the biggest. General Motors probably wasn't going to answer this question, maybe eventually in a couple of years. But we needed acceleration. So what we did is we went to a series of members, including xAd, and said, listen, put some money on the table. Let us go solve this problem and bring in a series of marketers. The marketers that we're doing studies with are these right here. We have signed agreements from each one of these marketers to do studies, not just in the US, and there's different marketers by different countries, but UK, Turkey, China, and Brazil. We are finally going to understand the impact of mobile in each one of those countries in these brands' marketing mix. That's a big deal. And so the opportunity today is to share some of that with you so that you can take that story forward. Let's talk about AT&T first. So AT&T was interested in a new phone, new device, it's called the Moto X. It's a pretty cool phone, changes colors, got all sorts of fancy stuff. They actually did a lot of really great advertising things. I'm not sure if this will actually, can you see, let me see if we can see some of this. I'm not sure, I didn't really.
Okay, Google now. Note to self. Buy more coffee.
Saving note.
Okay, Google now. Wake me up in 20 minutes.
Setting alarm.
Pretty cool, huh? Yeah. And you actually can go and change the colors. I won't play all those. And they, whoops. Okay, well, we'll go on to the next slide. Oh, well, actually, here we go. So they actually created an ad within a magazine, which I just thought this was great creative advertising. What, talk about creating, now that's a valuable proposition, I don't know. You pull the strip out and then you could literally change the color of the phone right there in a print magazine. Isn't that cool? Yeah. I know. I still don't know how they did it. I've never seen it. I've just seen the video. Okay. So you get the idea. Introduce a new phone. They do an awful lot of that. Let's assume that AT&T is pretty good at that kind of thing. This was running back in September, October. The primary goal for this was awareness around the phones, and that from AT&T was the marketing mix. Crushing. Even AT&T, please. 1% mobile, that's the best you can do? Oh, God. And what's so funny, too, is that I did a marketer interview. We're interviewing CMOs right now on their viewpoints of mobile, and I talked to David Christopher's his name, who's the CMO of AT&T Mobility. And he's the most bullish guy on mobile, and the fact that, this is what they did is sort of interesting at some level. So here's the issue. First one is, let's look at the impact that the investments had. So again, very small spending levels, right? Mobile, insignificant in terms of the total audience reach. Print, very small. Cool idea, didn't get very far. They ran it in Wired magazine. A couple of other print executions. Online desktop, not getting much either. TV. That's the impact that TV had. That's the people that, according to the measurement from Nielsen and so on, said that it would deliver. What's interesting, though, is that when you take and you combine efficiency and impact, right? This is what SMoX is measuring. And we don't have a whiteboard here that I could really explain to you, but I'm happy to do that if you want, sort of before we finish. What SMoX is measuring is what's the real impact by each individual channel. And there's a methodology called experimental design. It's basically what the drug companies do, right? They give this group a placebo and this group the drug, and then they see if this group freaks out and this group doesn't, right? That's basically, or what change is created. I'm sure it's much more positive. They don't freak out. It's not a technical medical term, but that's part of what they're looking for, right? So we're doing the same thing. This group doesn't get the ad. This group does get the ad. And then we look at your mix of media habits, which you're exposed to, and then we look at how you, in this case, brand metrics. We're looking, are you aware of the AT&T Moto X, right? Look at this impact, though. That print ad, you saw it, right? Huge impact for the dollar spent. Huge impact. Mobile, too, double the impact of TV. Here's, in essence, what's going on, okay? Just so you kind of understand this. The concept that's happening here is the concept of diminishing returns. How many of you would know the concept of diminishing returns in media? I don't know if you'd really know that. A few, yeah. It's the most important thing, okay? It matters everything, because here's basically what's happening. Every marketer in the world that I've ever experienced is spending on TV out here at some point, because you're going for percent penetration. You never get better than 100% awareness. You can never get 100% of purchase. You never get better than 100% of sales. So all media have diminishing returns. It's gravity. You can't violate it, okay? The issue is that all brands are spending so far out in TV that for each incremental dollar spent, they're getting very small gain, okay? Diminishing return curves always accelerate faster in the early parts. And so when you take money from out there that has very small gains and you move it back here, unless that cost is really high, as long as there's gains, you'll be much better off. Almost always. And by the way, that's not just mobile, although we're measuring mobile, because it also matters for any sort of early media because of how diminishing returns. That's what's happening. We're really just telling marketers you need to have a marketing mix because consumers have different media habits. We did a study for Colgate for Internet that said that if they had not spent in Internet, they had just spent in TV, which is what they had done, by the way, we told them that you would be avoiding 36% of people who buy toothpaste. So I said to Haber, I said to Jack at the time we did this, I said, Jack, I said, was the strategy to ignore 36% of the population who don't watch TV? Of course not. Of course not. But that's the effect of the decision they were making. And so therefore, it does become a strategy. You can't, just because you didn't write it down doesn't mean you didn't execute against that. So having a marketing mix is fundamentally huge and important. These are the actual curves, and it's called a spend to impact curve. A little complicated, but you get the idea, right? It's piercing through. I don't care about impressions. I don't care about reach. I don't care about frequency. None of that stuff matters. If I invest $1, what's the return for the brand's business? That's all this measures. It avoids all that other noise. That's what makes it so powerful, because it's about moving the business forward. Okay? And just to sort of, I think I already kind of made the point there, so I think you understand that if you look at these sort of curves early on, that print unit was really powerful, but it peaked because it couldn't produce any more reach. Okay? Print had great limitations because, nobody really reads anymore. So we'll let those businesses sort themselves out. Digital also, was okay. Mobile had a pretty good curve to it, though. Flattened out kind of quickly. I was a little surprised at that, but that, I think, may be a matter of time, right? So the end game, the end result, is that this is what AT&T did do. That's what they should have done. They should have allocated 16% of their budget to mobile. That's the magic number. 16%. By the way, print should have gone to 8% too, because the print stuff worked. And we have no problem at the MMA telling, we'll always release the truth around this. We'll talk about mobile more, but we'll always release the truth. 16%. If AT&T wanted to produce better gains, they would have done that. And in fact, the gains are such that, and I've tried to avoid sort of these kind of number charts for all of you, but if you understand what's happening, here's the current impact. When we do the reallocation, basically what you're doing is you're taking a little bit of people from TV, and because you're reallocating into more efficient, more effective, cost per effective channels, you get gains. Mobile's gains are huge. The point is that if they had chosen not to run mobile, because they did, they basically chose to ignore Chicago. We said, we don't care about Chicago, all those people there, screw them, we don't want them to know about the ad. We don't want them to know about the Moto X. We don't want them to buy it, we don't want them to know anything. Putting them in a cone of silence, keeping it away from them. That's the decision they made. They get that. Now the great news is that AT&T said, yeah, we like the methodology, it makes sense, and we have the technical skills to assess that, thank God. And this happens to align with other stuff we're seeing. We think this is right. So the mantra here is same budget, better results. Same budget, better results, same budget, better results, same budget, better results. It's that simple. Tell the brands over and over and over again. If they want to build their company, if they want to build their business, if they want to build their career, same budget, better results. And you'll hear that from the MMA. But wait, there's more. So a couple other things we found. Unfortunately, the data isn't clean enough to do the kind of analysis you might start asking me for here in a second. But what we do know is that the mobile had a 70% greater impact amongst men than women for this particular campaign. We don't know why. AT&T did know that. But if they had sort of midstream in this campaign known that and started to shift their mix to more heavy targeted males, they would have improved those already pretty dramatic results, right? Because every time you make effectiveness go up and the cost doesn't change, and the cost wouldn't change by targeting men more than women, I don't think it would create a different dynamic, they will produce better results, right? We also found too, and this is very true of all channels, and we're going to have to, as an user, get really good at this. If you got rid of the ads that didn't work, B didn't work, A did, then you would end up with a higher performance also out of the campaign. What I'd like to be able to tell you that if we'd gotten rid of the ads, because we could do that, if we had good clean data, we could eliminate the ads and we could rebalance the mix and we could come up with a model of understanding that. And I could actually tell you what the optimization would be. I don't know. The data wasn't clean enough for this one. We had a lot of challenges with data collection on that. Okay. So now you want to see the secret Subway campaign?
Yeah.
So Subway was different. They're doing a promotion, a foot-long promotion, which is pretty well worn at this point. So interesting. Their campaign ran in September of last year. They were focused on purchase intent. It's all about driving people to the store, right? It's all about driving foot traffic. That's fundamentally what they're about, especially for franchise. They spent 2% in mobile, right? Here were their curves. This is really interesting. I wouldn't have guessed this, by the way. I wouldn't have expected this. Mobile, these are their actual diminishing return curves. This is exactly what's going on. TV, flatlined. To spend another dollar in TV is a complete waste of money. It will produce no value whatsoever. None, none, none. Now, if you wait and people start to forget and then you run it, then fine. But at this point in this campaign, in a 4-week campaign, there was no additional spending to matter. What was interesting is that mobile video and mobile banner both performed better than online. I don't know that I would have guessed that. I mean, maybe I can create theories about why that's the case, and I'd love to assess that. But interesting that mobile video, which tends to be pretty expensive on a CPM basis, is doing this well. But again, remember, we're factoring here cost relative to effectiveness. And the market is making a judgment as to what those CPM should be. That's what the market does. But the market doesn't have good information, and therefore, they don't make, they're not making always the most optimized decisions. Go. Yeah, of course, yeah.
Isn't it TV flatlines, but also, I mean, mobile video and banner both look like they flatline in online, so.
They do. So it's a good question. So they do, but see, here's the thing, is that you still got a greater slope here for way out here to 8 frequency. I mean, you're now talking about quadrupling. That might even be almost 7, 8x the spend that you have now, and you still got room to go. Okay?
That is where they're currently spending.
Right. So you still got a lot of room. You're still not going to get any value here. So it's still a better choice. There's another question though. There's a couple things that drive this. So there are basically 3 things that drive SMoX, the whole thing. Creative effectiveness. So producing better creative ads, which is the big next initiative that the MMA is probably going to take on. We've got to teach marketers to do this well, because if they don't, they're never going to believe in it, right? And it gets them excited, so it's also a good thing to just generally do anyway. Reach plays a real factor in this, and remember I said 34% penetration worldwide for phones. I mean, video probably has very low penetration, although that's changing really dramatically with tablets and so on. So we do have reach issues here that are still going on. We have a consumer adoption issue that's still going on that all is going to kind of hold growth. In other words, we've got a lot of headroom. I'm sorry, I'm making the point in a funny way. We have a lot of headroom to go. Don't worry about it. It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. And listen, we're never going to be 80% of the budget. That would not be appropriate, I don't think. Although, I don't know. You could make an argument, it's a little looking into the future. Okay. Okay, make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So current mobile allocation was 2%. If they had gone to 7% with just mobile displays, they would have reached 1.2 million people more in converting them to purchase intent. So let me just make sure, because I don't know everybody's level of knowledge, right? Purchase intent, you answered the question saying, would you choose to go buy a sandwich from Subway today? It's that kind of thing. What's your intent to purchase? Now, Subway has honestly never told me the linkage between intent to purchase and actual behavior, actual sales. I don't know. Most brands see pretty strong linkage there. I just don't know Subway's. But it should be a pretty positive thing. As you're looking though, if we add in video, because video was so impactful, you're talking about 1.6 million more people who say, I'm going to go buy a sandwich today. That's a very powerful thing. And remember, what's the mantra? Same budget, better results. Same budget, better results. Over and over and over again. The net of it is that if Subway had gone to 5.5%, I'm sorry, had gone to 11% of their budget, they would have seen a performance of 5.5%. Okay? Yeah.
How does that translate into dollars?
I don't know. I I don't know. I will know in some of the others. Walmart is going to measure sales. Coca-Cola is going to measure sales. Some of the other brands will just measure brand impact. So
What about Colgate?
Colgate is measuring sales. Yeah, and they're going to do, I think they're,
How do they measure
I think
that?
they're doing cool.
The grocery stores and all that stuff.
We pulled all that data. We did a study, I'll tell you how complicated this stuff gets. We did a study for Ford for the internet age, for the F-150. F-150 is the #1 selling car line in America. America buys more F-150s than any other car. Isn't that funny? Those of you in New York City will always find that like me a little amusing, that we're a truck country. We are. But kind of funny, isn't it?
I come from the Midwest.
You come from the Midwest, so you knew we're a truck country. Good. But for the way we did that is we measured the media habits for that study of 30,000 people. We knew how much TV they've watched, we knew how many magazines ads they've been seeing, how many online ads, et cetera, right? We knew all that information for these 30,000 people. And then we went and pulled the DMV records from every single state, which was 500,000 trucks that had been sold in a 6-month period. And we matched that 500,000 person database back to the 30,000 people. So we knew exactly what your media exposure had been and what that represented in the national media plan. And we also then knew whether or not you bought a truck or not. Yeah, it's cool. It's really cool stuff. This is take it to the bank. This is not hypothetical. This is not, we made some shit up. This is like we really know exactly what will happen with these businesses. It's a big deal. Okay. Say it.
Oh, wait.
Very good. You're doing a good job. So here's the most impactful thing, this whole thing, which is why it astonishes me that they haven't jumped all over this thing. And I'd ask you what action you would take. The thing that we found is that the ads run during lunchtime for Subway from 11 to 1 performed at 3x the impact of the other ads during the rest of the day. 3x. So do you get what I'm saying? So if I run an ad, if I run an ad over here, and it does okay, but if I run it over here and it does 3 times the impact for consumers, what would you do? Why wouldn't you run all your mobile ads from 11 to 1 all the time? And so go back to our, let's go back to our curves, right? Here. Go back to our curves, which is what would have happened to this curve with 3x the impact? I don't have good enough data to model that. That's the problem. I will next time because we're doing much better in the data collection. We had a lot of challenges. It was really hard to get this set up, right? Much harder than I realized. One of those things. I had one of my brothers ask me, why do you do all these interesting things? I said, listen, if I'd known any of them were going to be as hard as they turned out to be, I never would have tried any of them. So there's a level of stupidity that makes me successful. That's kind of that's my view of the world. Very powerful information. Very powerful. And in fact, at one time I'd seen that the number was actually higher than 3x, but the research firm, because the data was a little less clean, they just pulled it down because I think they just felt it seemed unbelievable at one point. This is take it to the bank kind of stuff. Go.
Are you able to make generalizations based off of this? Like you said, Colgate was at 12%, would have seen a 12%, or they should have put 12% of their budget into mobile instead of 1, or was it 17, and then Subway is 11. Are you able? Is each brand going to have a different percentage?
Yes, each brand. Yeah.
Are you able to say, like in general?
No, I can't say in general, although you all will at some point. It's kind of what the industry does. Listen, the number's going to be between 10 and 15%. It just is going to be, and as smartphone penetration continues to increase, it'll probably move up to 15, 20%. But it depends on both how much more effective we make the ads and what your pricing is. I mean, listen, the best place in the world is that, we create so much demand that marketers spend more aggressively in the mobile than consumers are adopting it. Yeah, right. Never going to happen. And then CPMs rise, and you're making a lot more money in each impression. It's probably not going to really happen because consumer supply is so high and marketer demand is so low that pricing is going to remain a little stilted.
How many different brands within verticals do you plan to tackle?
Oh, that's a very good. One brand per category.
How does Colgate and Unilever, how does that?
Unilever is doing ice cream, and Colgate doesn't sell in that category, so it's okay. Yeah, that was very, very smart. That was good. There's a man really paying attention. You should all make note. Now that both said you as smart and isolated you from the rest of them.
They're both my clients.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay, good. Okay, got it. You were okay. Okay. So, what's the future look like? Well.
I love that.
Oh.
That video is really hard.
3,000 years, 2,000.
YouTube, Twitter, and
quick fix.
That's my prediction. That's what I think is going to happen. Not really. Let's summarize. Again, totally gratuitous. Nothing to do with anything. I just thought it was funny. So here's a summary. Mix is 11 to 16%. The issue is that these are individual real-world campaigns, so they're hard to extrapolate. Eventually, we should have enough data that we can start to make some, see patterns. But I will tell you, I've done campaigns. We did a this is the worst day of my life. We did a $600,000 campaign for was it Motorola? No. Was it Motorola? It must have been Motorola. Why do I think that wasn't? For Motorola, $600,000 campaign, because this research used to be really super expensive. And $600,000 campaign, and it basically proved that the internet didn't make a difference. I was like, that's not the answer I wanted. But we'll release those results too. It's about telling the truth. It's about helping them trust us to know that we're here to look out for their best interest. That's the way I'd like this to show. Subway, increased purchase intent 5.5%. Moto X, AT&T, awareness 12%. Targeted men heavier would have increased performance of both campaigns. So would getting rid of lower performing ads, always the case. That's a dumb point, but your ability to pre-test ads and to get rid of the bad ones, you should be doing that for your clients. It's a program you could offer. So, and I could talk to more if you want, Monica. Maybe we can talk about sort of Forbes had a great approach that they did back in the internet that paid huge for them. And for Subway, targeted lunchtime improved mobile performance there. This is what we know right now today. There's other little insight, but for you have like a one slide, this is the thing that you should sort of tattoo in the inside of your hand so you can take out the clients. So, but let's talk about what the impact is, right? Because here's the thing. During the course of the time that I got to run the IB and do this research before, and I don't know how many of you figured out that this time I'm doing SMoX research, and last time I did xMoX. Yes, I took the 4 blocks home and gave them to my children. They rearranged them, and we came up with a new name. Same 4 blocks. Here's what happened. Here's what happened with the internet. Internet, over the course of the time we were doing this research, if baseline was 1, because we went back and we talked to the brands who had done studies. It was Olay, Ford, Johnson & Johnson. There was Neutrogena in there. I'm trying to think who the other brands were. Well, you get the idea. Big brands that are doing studies. We went back and talked to 7 of them about what happened over the course of their history of doing this research for internet. Industry grew 2x. The brands spent 32x over the course of 5 years. They increased their internet spending by that much. The industry grew 2x. This is you get 3,000%, right? Astonishing, incredible results. And the companies themselves grew 18x over that time. So Olay did a study within Procter & Gamble, right? Olay within Procter & Gamble, all of Procter & Gamble adopted results. Ford came out 3 years after they did their study because what it proved was they could improve sales performance by 21%. They sold 21% more trucks as a result of changing their marketing mix. Unbelievable. Ford, only company didn't have to take a bailout. Coincidence? I think not. Hard to say. A little more complicated than that. But nonetheless, they certainly had a big advantage. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that we're going to do to support this. We'd love to have your support. I'm going to give you 3 points here for the next step actions and how you make money. Right? That's where we start. Right? It's all about finding oil. It's all about making money. That's what business is about. We're going to change the world in the process, but for you all, he wants you to make money. So we're going to follow what he says, right? Okay. There's a big marketing effort. This whole thing will last a total of about 18 months. We may choose to raise another round of funding and go back and do it. We spent about $5-6 million in doing this internet. It paid out for a while. We want to cover more categories. We want to get in deeper in each one. So there's a lot of other stuff that can happen, but this is where we are right now. Okay. 3 things you can do, right? First off, so taking the chart 32x, know these people. They are about to spend a lot of money in mobile. Do you guys know that we appointed a new chair, that my chair is a guy named John Costello, the president CMO of Dunkin' Brands. John is the former CMO of Yahoo, Sears, Home Depot, and I think he said he was CMO at Pepsi at one point, which I didn't know that. Kind of caught me off guard when I heard him say it the other day. Okay, so first step is make sure you're going after those people because they are spending big. Okay, okay. The next one, there's other pockets of oil. I'm going to show you 2 other slides. These are all of the competitors to Walmart, to Subway, to MasterCard. The MMA is going to be in their offices so fast to tell them about these results. I just talked to Quiznos this week. I've already told them. We will get around to everybody else. Duncan certainly knows, although he's not spending where he should, so my chairman needs to do a better job of that. We'll work on that. Still hard, knowing versus doing. So, and this is, by the way, this is what we believe their increase in mobile spend will be, not their total increase in mobile. I need to do some more work on this data here. We're working on it last night. I don't think we got 100% right. I got to check it. But those amounts. And then these categories too. AT&T, right? I've already got a meeting set up with Verizon, and we're getting to others. And we will, our job is to go tackle each one of them, tell them the story, help them move forward, in particular the way we work with Walmart. So, the estimate is that we believe that all those categories are going to be spending at $1.2 billion additional. I want to do more work on this before I sort of really roll that number out, but that's really the idea, right? That's it. So, the issue is simple. Right? It's a knowing versus doing gap. So now we know more. We just got to drive them beyond the doing gap. And we're hoping that we're appealing to them with a story that says that this is the way to do it, that this will make the biggest direction, the biggest difference in their business and in their careers. That's the idea. So with that, I think we're going to try to find some oil, right? Yeah. Great. Thanks, everybody.